Buenos dias und herzlich willkommen bei Gate 7, deinem Podcast über Fernweh und Fotografie. In dieser Show geht es um Menschen, für die Reisen mehr ist als Spaß und Erholung. Freue dich auf praktische Tipps und Tricks, wie du tief in fremde Kulturen eintauchst und lerne, deine Abenteuer in bewegenden Bildern festzuhalten, egal mit welcher Kamera. Bist du bereit? Dann los, lass uns abheben mit deinem Gastgeber, Kai Beermann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gate 7 podcast. It's time for another episode in English, and my guest today is Indian street photographer Soumya Shankar Ghosal. I got to know Soumya a couple of years ago when I interviewed him for my English photography website, which is called The Art of Creative Photography. And since I really appreciate his photography, I invited him to come on as a guest on my podcast now. It's a very nice way to follow up with him. Soumya is, as I said, an excellent street photographer, and in this conversation we cover a wide variety of topics, including great practical advice on how to take better street photos. But the advice that Soumya gives is not just applicable to street photography. You can apply it to all other sorts of genres and areas of photography. Then we talk about his city, Kolkata, what makes it an interesting place for a photographer. He shares lots of information about Indian culture, and he tells a fascinating story about a meeting that he had with Steve McCurry on the streets of Kolkata. Before we dive into this interview, just a couple of quick announcements. The photos that we talk about you can find in the show notes, and I already mentioned my photography blog or magazine, which is called The Art of Creative Photography. I invite you to check out that site. It's artofcreativephotography.com, and there you find over 300 interviews with photographers from all around the world, from different genres such as street photography, landscape photography, portrait photography, photojournalism, and they all share their little secrets, give advice on how to become a better photographer. Last but not least, in this interview, we talk a great deal about Steve McCurry, and I wrote a review on his latest book, which is called Untold, The Stories Behind the Photographs. You find that article also on Art of Creative Photography, and I put the links in the show notes. But now, without further ado, let's get right into the interview with Soumya Shankar Ghosal. Enjoy. Hello, Soumya. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kai. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking to you. Hello to India. You're from Kolkata, and you're a street photographer there. What else do the listeners have to know about you, Soumya?
Well, I'm a management consultant by profession. Photography is not my profession, but probably it has become a way of life over the period of time.
Yeah, it's become a way of life. Photography as a creative outlet alongside your job in finance. When did you discover your passion for photography?
The fascination about photography started at a very young age. My grandfather, my father were into photography. Even in our home, we have a dedicated room to photography. It was basically the dark room for my grandfather. Still today, that particular room is known as the photography room.
Ah, okay. So you still have that?
Yeah, we still have that. Even like the developers, those old chemicals, those aluminium utensils or something that they used to develop, those are still there. The room is used, of course, now for a very different purpose. It is more like the worship room right now. But still today, even if it's a worship room, we refer it as a photography room.
Yeah. Okay. So every now and then you go into that room and develop some film. But I suppose you shoot mostly digital, right?
Yeah. No. That was a room that belonged to my grandfather. The room is still there. His equipments are still there. I don't use it, but we have kept it as his memory.
Ah, okay. Yes, now I understand.
Yeah.
That's great. And can you still record your or recall your first moments with the camera? What kind of pictures did you take in the beginning? What was fascinating to you?
I'll tell you, like my grandfather was involved with one of the oldest photography institutions in India, and so I used to see him a lot involved in photography. Now, what I can realize, what he used to do is like sign photography acceptance certificates. He used to take me to photography conventions and exhibitions. Honestly, I was too young at that age to realize what photography was, but probably today I can relate all those old and sweet memories. So I've basically grown up seeing up with cameras, though as a kid I was not allowed to touch them. The whole the whole interest of becoming a photography was absolutely out of curiosity. I really wanted to explore what was this fascinating what photography was all about. So the mystery part was something that was like fascinated me very much. Like every still photograph has a story attached to it, like unlike a movie that you can come back to a photograph again and again and probably you will find something new about it.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's one of the fascinating points about photography. You always see some new details and see it in a new way. And yes, when you go back and to look at an image.
That's right. And you were probably asking me like what were the beginnings of my photography. I studied in a school where I had an access to a library which had a huge collection of National Geographic magazines. As a kid, books like Asterix, Noddy, Tintin didn't attract me very much, as like a National Geography magazine did. I used to be fascinated by those brilliant photos, especially the wildlife ones. And the magazines used to have those advertisements of cameras and the big white lenses, which today I realize were Canon telephoto lenses. So this was when I was around in standard 7, when I was, let's say I was around 13 years old. I was gifted a photophone camera. It was basically a point and shoot camera, but the hobby could not be pursued for a very long time at that point of time, because developing films were pretty costly in those days. And as a kid, like out of the pocket money, it would be not very sustainable to go ahead with it. So, however, in 2002, our family purchased our first digital camera. It was a Sony 2 megapixel camera with about a 16 MB of inbuilt storage. Of course, you could increase it with a Sony memory stick. Uh, that was a very different form of SD cards that we use like from today. It was a longish kind of a thing. So that particular camera was actually a very boon for me, except for the cost of the hardware, which was quite a bit at that point of time. But there was technically no cost attached to the developing of any kind of film, because everything it was digital.
Mm.
So I had the liberty to access to it, and that is how my photography evolved from the interest to somewhat into reality.
Yes. And when did your interest in street photography start?
I'll be very honest with you. Like any other photographer, I just used to shoot anything that used to catch my imagination at that point of time. I'm talking about the period, let's say, from 2002 to around 2006 till even 2006 also. So that included, like, it could be anything. It could be from birds to sunsets. I still remember spending an entire day out in a picnic only to shoot butterflies. That I did with that particular camera. So, however, over a period of time, I probably realized it was taking me actually nowhere, because these photos were okay, but they were mere snapshots, nothing else. The objective of photography for me is memories. So, clicking the shutter button results in a photograph, but you probably need a heart and soul that comes together to make it a memory. And I'll tell you something very interesting. Over those period of years, let's say from 2002 to till 2006, I used to capture probably everything except people. So if any of my photographs used to have people in it, I was the first
Hmm.
person to delete that photograph. I somehow did not like taking photographs of people, but I do not know what happened. I mean, probably I tried to find new meanings to my photography. Suddenly, I mean, I found a lot of interest in people, and people forms a basis of my photography nowadays.
Okay. Yes. Yes. You see that in on your website, the how you focus on people. There are fascinating portraits of people that you show there, and it seems to be one of the main topics of your photography, or your main focus of your photography.
See, for me, like street photography is all about the mystery and exploring the unknown, and human beings are probably the most intriguing characters. The same person could be happy at one moment and be sad in moments later. Studying human beings is very interesting, and for me, street photography is not just about the roads, lanes, and alleyways. It is about the human conditions. It is about the people who chalk out the characteristics of the place. It is about the time and place where I live. So recording the moments of time is which is fascinating to me in terms of street photography.
Hmm. So you live in Kolkata. What kind of place is that? Tell us a little bit about the city and its people. What is street photography like where you live?
Right. I was born and brought up in a place called Kolkata, which is also referred to the other name like a city of joy. So I have been living here ever since, probably except 2 years when I had shifted to the capital of India, that is New Delhi. But I have all again come back. But photography to me is like has been like to explore to and know the city better. I've always been a traveler in my own city, so every time I venture out in Kolkata, it never fails to fascinate me. On the personal front, I'll tell you it is more about understanding people.
Yes. And what is the city like? Like, what's the well, as a street photographer, what makes it a interesting place to shoot on the streets of Kolkata?
To me, as a photographer, Kolkata is an extremely interesting city. The metropolitan city is the home to people not only from the cities in and around India, but it also from the neighboring countries as well. Like people from Nepal, people from Bangladesh, even people from Bhutan are over here. So Kolkata has a
Hmm.
confluence of culture which makes it very unique, probably compared to other cities in India. However, India as a country is a very exciting place to be in. So we get to see a lot in the city itself. It is almost like traveling across your own city, and you get to see a lot of festivals, celebrations from various different cultures. At the same time, Kolkata is probably one of the oldest city in India, which has a huge cultural and architectural heritage. Yet at the same time, that it is one of the fastest growing modernized metropolises in India. So that makes Kolkata very unique in terms of an old and new culture being together.
What does a normal day of shooting look like for you? Do you go out pretty much every day, or just only on the weekends? How often are you actually? Do you find the time to go out with your camera?
I would love to go out every day, but the work doesn't allow me to do so. So the day that I primarily choose is Saturdays, because in India Saturdays are not technically holidays. We do not, in most of the places except probably for the IT sector and for a few other sectors, maybe Saturdays and Sundays are off. But in general, Sunday is the only off day here. So the I choose Saturday because probably there is a little bit of less amount of work, and still Saturday is it has a little bit of that week influence. It's an official day, so you see a lot of people out on the streets. So it's more like a general weekday itself. I generally try to avoid Sundays because it is like it's a holiday, so it's more like people are not out on street so much. But had is if there is a certain kind of a, let's say, a festival or a cultural activity going on during a weekday, I try to go out. I try. It doesn't happen every day, but once in a while I do. But for me, primarily it is Saturdays.
Hmm. Yeah. That's good. And what's your approach? Or are you just strolling the streets, waiting for an interesting situation to unfold in front of your cameras, or are you more or seeking out images? Like, well, for example, stopping at an interesting corner, setting a stage, and waiting for some interesting people to show up and enter the scene.
I'll tell it's a mix of both, because what I used to try maybe a few years back, I used to plan out my walk that today I'll go and I'll try to shoot this things. But the only problem with that was, since I was too much concentrating on a certain aspect of a subject, I was actually missing out on the other moments. So today, what I try to do is I go out on the street. I keep an open mind. I try to observe like what is happening in and around me. So that is how that would be my approach as of now.
And are there any influences from other photographers that you've incorporated into your own creative process? And yeah, just some names that you've come across doing research on the internet or looking through photography books?
Right, yeah. The first and foremost inspiration would be my grandfather and father, whom I have seen been dedicated towards photography. However, there are quite a few photographers like who have a big influence of me, and of course, one of the prominent names would be Steve McCurry. More than his photographs, his constant dedication towards photography has influenced me. Like a person who could spend 40 years dedicated to photography, that is something probably very, very big. As a kid, when I was in a school, like I used to see this National Geographic magazine, and I came across this certain cover which had the Afghan refugee girl called Sharbat Gula, for which Steve McCurry is so famous for. So that at that moment of time, I did not know who Steve McCurry was, but that but he had that particular photograph has always been an influence on me, because see, that is just not a photograph. It shows what did the Afghan refugees face during a war. So a certain photograph had the power to change the outlook of the Western world towards the people in the Afghanistan or Pakistan.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And there's something, I'll tell you, there's something interesting that happened in the month of April, and I remember the date very, very well. It was 7th of April. I had a very brilliant opportunity to meet Steve McCurry. He was in Kolkata.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please tell us.
So what happened was, like, we had gone to a place called Kumotuli. Kumotuli is a place in Kolkata which is basically a potter's place. I mean, they make in a Hindu tradition, we worship gods and goddesses, and these are basically physical statues. And for the festivals, the statues are actually made up of mud and a bamboo. It is basically, it's a beautiful structures they actually make it out. And there's a place called Kumotuli in the northern part of Calcutta, and we were going out on a walk, and we suddenly saw a foreigner roaming around, and I had an idea like. Maybe he's not Steve McCurry, he could be someone else, but he did look like Steve McCurry very much. So I waited for about, I was just maybe standing about 4 or 5 feet away from him, and he was actually very much busy clicking the photographs. So I did not disturb him. After 4 or 5 minutes, I saw him, like he moved to a different place. I did not, again, I did not, now I realize that this person is Steve McCurry. So I did not want to disturb him at all. So now, after his shoot got completed, he was coming back, and I just, I knew that he was Steve McCurry. So I requested, can I please borrow 60 seconds of your time? And he started laughing. He said, like, why do you want to borrow only 60 seconds of your time? I said, no, you are a busy person. I'm sure you have come to Kolkata definitely for some assignment, or it could be a personal tour. So I do not want to disturb you. But very luckily, he was very, very kind enough to talk to us almost about 10 minutes. He gave us 10 minutes, and last we took an opportunity to take a photograph with him. So that is a very special memory for me.
Yes, I imagine like a photographer that you admire, and then all of a sudden you meet him on the street by pure
Yes.
coincidence.
It's a big coincidence. And if I recall one of his videos, I see a lot of his videos on YouTube. In one of his videos, he was in Delhi and he had said, like, had I received a blank check, the only city in the world I would choose is Kolkata. And I told about the statement to him that, sir, you had said particular the statement in one of your videos. He said, okay, you seem to be a very rich guy. Why don't you hand over the check to me? I'll stay in Kolkata. I said, no, I'm not that kind of a rich person who can afford Steve McCurry in Kolkata. So he was very kind enough. Like, I never thought he would be so kind enough to have a person to be talking to a person like me who is absolutely, compared to him, absolutely nothing.
Hmm. Yes. And what other questions did you have for him?
The questions, I spoke a little more about his. Everybody knows him for his famous works, but I'll tell you, there is a certain thing. Of course, I did not tell this to him, but this is one of my personal experience. I was. It was probably in the year maybe 2008, 9, 10, around that period. I saw one of his Kolkata photographs. And when I saw this particular Kolkata photograph, I was a little upset. I thought, like, a person like Steve McCurry, who is such a famous photographer, how did he shoot such a mediocre photograph of Kolkata? I came back home that night and I came back to that photograph once again. Like, what is so special about this photograph? Because if I remember very well, this particular Calcutta photograph was on his website. So definitely it had something very special to it. So when I came back home later at that night, I saw that photograph for about 10-15 minutes. I tried to find out what is so great about that photograph. And I'll tell you, that is one of the finest photographs of Kolkata I have ever seen. What I really missed out was, I thought it was just a snapshot of Kolkata, but that particular photograph was so brilliantly taken. See, Kolkata is characterized by quite a few things. One is a cab, that is we call taxi out over here. It is a black and a yellow kind of a cab, that is we call it taxi. It is very much a symbol of Kolkata. At the same time, there is something called a hand pulled rickshaw. I'm not too sure if you know about this particular uh, thing. It is like, it has got two wheels, and there is something. It is basically somebody sits. There is a chair kind of a thing. There is a seat. Beneath the seat, there are two wheels, and there is somebody who pulls. It is something like a cart, but it is actually used for pulling some tourists or passengers. So that is again a very much a Calcutta symbol. And there is this two particular, and one more thing, probably you know, there is something called a tram. Tram is basically an electric train, but it runs on tracks, but on roads, in the streets. It is again the tram, the yellow and black taxi, the hand pulled rickshaw. These are very very particular characteristics of Calcutta. So in that particular photograph, all these elements were present. So having all these things present in one photograph, I'll tell you, being a photographer from this city, it is an absolutely tough job to have it. I am sure he had probably spent a few. I know from which particular building he took that photograph, because I have also been to that building just to know about the place. But I can tell you, it was a very, very brilliant and a predetermined photograph that he wanted to visualize Kolkata with the symbols. It was a brilliant photograph. So I was absolutely mistaken. My initial perception about the photograph, that it was not a good one, it was absolutely wrong.
Yes. Oh, so in the first place, to you, for someone living in that city, it was just something you see all the time, and it didn't.
Yes.
Okay.
It did not at all interest me. I was a little, I'll tell you, I was a little upset. Like, what kind of photograph is this?
Uh,
But but it could be a coincidence, but a person like Steve McCurry won't rely on probably those kind of coincidence. I am sure he had seen and observed and then clicked.
Hmm. And that's something you asked him in when you had a chance to meet him, and
Yes, yes, yes. I did not, of course, I did not say about my bad experience regarding the photograph, but I did say that I do follow a lot of your Kolkata photographs. They're absolutely brilliant. As a foreigner, you have actually taught me how to see my own city.
Mm. That's something I was going to ask you, or that's very interesting. Like Steve McCurry is known for his photography in India, and he's
Yeah.
covered the country, on extensively. And
Yes.
for someone from India like you, what do you feel when you look at his pictures? Is he able to capture the essence of India in his images?
Uh, One word: mesmerizing. One word. I mean, I do not think I have any more words to describe his work. He, what I understand is, even before coming to a place, I am sure he studies about that place a lot. Otherwise, for each kind of photographs, for example, Steve McCurry has a brilliant work on monsoons in India, because in India monsoons are pretty big and it is very, very devastating at times. One of the photographs which I recall very vividly, it was shot in a state called Gujarat. So this photograph is about a place. I do not know the name of the place where he had shot this particular photograph, but it was something like the place was totally flooded, and a old tailor was actually carrying his sewing machine on, probably, if I am remembering very right, on top of his head. So, and it was a very the name of the sewing machine company, the company that produced, is called Usha, USHA. They are a popular sewing machine manufacturing company in India, and it was absolutely rusted. So it was more like how people try to protect their livelihood in spite of those kind of a flood. And like something very, very interesting happened after that particular photograph was published. The Usha company came to know about this photograph. I'm sure it was definitely published in National Geographic magazine, and they were so overwhelmed about this particular photograph, they gifted a new machine to this person, this old tailor, and he was absolutely an old person.
Hmm.
So it not only captured an essence of a country, it also probably turned the life of a certain person. So that would be the power of his photographs.
Hmm. Yes, that's very, very strong impact he has with this photography, or it shows what impact photography in general can have.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting to hear from you that that he's able to really capture what India is like. And is there anything that you've adopted from his style of shooting, or that has made you see your own photography in a different way?
What I really like about him is the style, the documentary style of work that he does, or he has been doing all over the years. Yes, of course, I do get inspired about through his work. I am sure thousands and thousands of people, probably not thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of photographers across the world are definitely influenced by his work. But for me, as a person, not only me, I'm sure every photographer does it. Everybody should have their own sense of style.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we can be inspired, but probably not the imitation part of it. And of course, who are we to imitate him? Nobody.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, how would you describe your style then?
My style would be more into storytelling. I mean, I try to tell, I try my best to tell stories through my photographs. It is, see, for me, like photography is something in which, in photography, if you share a photograph with somebody, like for example, our mother tongues are different, but we are communicating in English. But had we did not know English, probably uh, photography would be one thing that would be help us in communicating. You do not know, even if you do not know the other person's language, probably the other person will still understand what, at least what you're trying to take a photograph of. It's an absolute non-verbal mode of communication, yet it connects. Unlike, let's say, unlike a song, like a song, for example, if I hear a Latin American song, or even a German song, or let's say even maybe let's say a South Indian song, let's say Tamil song. Even though I'm from India, I do not understand probably one bit of Tamil. Maybe the tune, maybe the music would be very, very soothing to my ears, but at the end of the day, I'll not actually understand what is being told. But had it been a photograph, if for example, if somebody from Africa has taken a photograph, I'll still be able to get some understanding of it without even anything being written about it.
Mm. Yeah, it's more universal.
Yes. It's one of the probably unspoken languages.
Yes.
To connect.
Exactly. Yes. Well, let's talk about some of your images. And well, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on your style doing that. And there's, for example, one image in your gallery on your website. It's a very striking photo. I think it shows it's shot at night, and on the dominating part of the image is a mosque. I think it's lit with its towers, and you shot it from a building, from the roof of a building opposite of it, and there's on the left side of the photo, on this rooftop, you see this little hut, and there's a man sitting there on his carpet or whatever he uses to sit to place it himself on the floor, and he is praying. And it's this very, very striking juxtaposition. You see the mosque as a symbol of religion and this big place, and then you have this man in solitude praying in this, scarcely lit room on the rooftop opposite of the big mosque. That's
Yes, I'll tell you a little background about this particular image. This was actually shot on the eve of Eid. Eid is one of the prominent celebrations for people who belong to the Muslim religion. So this particular image was shot from a rooftop of a madrasa. A madrasa is basically a Muslim school for children. It is basically a religious school, and since it was shot on the particular day of Eid, I mean, it is shot in a place called Nakhoda Mosque. It is one of the biggest mosques in Calcutta. Generally, people out over here call it a Bara Masjid. Bara Masjid is the biggest mosque. Masjid is basically the Indian version of saying mosque. So we had been there on the eve of Eid, and this mosque is actually lit on the eve of Eid, and Eid is basically a celebration. So if we look on the streets down under, it would be all people buying clothes, buying food. It is absolutely a celebratory mood. But the man on the left that we see, he is absolutely devoted to his prayers. All things, all celebrations are going on. It's a kind of a juxtaposition. All celebrations, as you've told, it's going on the right hand portion of the image. But this particular man is totally devoted towards God, and he is praying.
Yes.
So that struck me very well. Like it's something very, very different that is happening across.
Yeah, it's a amazing image.
Thank you.
And then there's another one with a very famous symbol of Kolkata, Mother Teresa.
Yeah.
And there's a statue of her holding a baby in her
Yes.
arms.
Yeah.
And that's on the left part of the image. And then
That's right.
from the right part, there's a man entering the image with his son on his
Yeah.
arm. And it's, again, juxtaposition. And yeah,
It
just
was a brilliant coincidence. We were shooting at a place called Ripon Street, and this particular area is a Muslim dominated area. There are a lot of mosques, and this particular Mother Teresa statue is in front of a school called St. Mary's. It's a known school in around that area. So we were shooting, and I suddenly saw a person along with a baby coming towards the statue where I was standing. I took probably 3 or 4 shots of that particular man along with that baby. For me, it was something like, in one hand, Mother Teresa or a mother figure holding a child, on the other hand, a father holding a child. At the same time, it is all about love, yet at the same time, it is about two different religions.
yes, that's true.
So whether it's a Hindu religion or a Christianity or it's Muslim, at the end of the day, probably the message remains the same: the spreading of love. And something very interesting happened after this image. Like, I took this image, and this man comes in and he asks me, why did you take this image? I said, oh yeah, I love doing a lot of photography in Kolkata, so I took. He saw that image and he went away. He was actually going to off. It was probably, I think it was a Sunday, probably it was a Sunday, and he was actually going with his son to offer the evening prayers, which they call namaz. So, and I came back home. I probably the next day or maybe 1 or 2 days later, I posted this image on Facebook. I never knew, like, somebody commented, somebody actually tagged this person. See, is this you? And he said, yes, this is me. Later I came to know he's actually a doctor in Calcutta.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, Facebook has been so kind enough. I mean, somebody from my friend list found that particular person, tagged him. Now we are friends on Facebook. It's very interesting.
Yeah, beautiful story. And
Yeah.
how do people in general react to having their picture taken on the street? Like when he first asked you what you were doing there,
Yeah.
what did you think? Was it more like a confrontational situation that he wasn't uncomfortable with you taking the
So he
picture?
was a little uncomfortable because generally people see, street photographers are not people you find every day on the street. People generally, in particularly, I'll tell you about India. In general, people, if you are having a camera on you, people generally think you are from the press.
Yes.
So they do. I mean, I don't expect general people to understand about street photography, but generally people find it very amusing. Why would people out with cameras go out on streets and shoot people? And people generally find it very amusing. Like, why would you do it? So this person was a little bit not confrontational, as such, but he was a little curious. Like, why did you shoot? I said, no problem. I shot this, and if you're not very happy, I will delete it. He said, no problem. Keep it. So, but in general, Kolkata, I'll tell you, people do not confront much, but at times they do. At times they do because they are a little worried. Why are they being photographed? That is probably one reason. Like, they're a little afraid why it is being done. But if you show them the photos, they start become more comfortable.
Right. Yeah, you have to be open about it, and I think this is what happens
Yes.
all over the world. Yeah.
So, and the best thing that I found is, like, not to lie them, because not to tell them that I am from the press, because if you tell them I am from the press, they might be very happy, but at the end of the day, it would be like cheating people. It is not nice. The best thing that I found, what I tell my students is, like, whenever people ask you any question, be very open about it. Tell them that you are practicing photography, Don't tell too much about street photography, otherwise they will getting confused. Just tell them I practice photography, so this is one of my assignments that I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
that is probably one of the excuses that you can easily. It is actually not lying, but at the same time you are not deceiving the people also.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's true. Yeah. Well, you said that on the one hand, you are a street photographer, and on the other hand, you also like this documentary approach to photography. And I think the first picture we talked about is more an example for the documentary photography approach, and maybe this one also ties in a little bit in that. Then there are other images that are pure street photography with a strong sense of humor in them as well, like situations that are kind of just from the perspective you chose that add a strong sense of humor to it. There's one, for example, taken on a market, and there's someone holding up a bag with some goldfish in them. And then there's a vendor sitting on the floor. And the way you compose this image is that the bag with the fish covers his head. And there's, like, from the left side, the person holding that bag. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but she's pointing towards the fish, and this makes, like, for a very interesting and humorous shot.
Yes, in Kolkata, there is a place called Galif Street. It is basically it's a market. It opens only on Sundays. In other days, you do not have this market. It's only a Sunday market. It's a huge pet market. You get birds, dogs, rabbits, various kind of fishes, uh, plants. You name it, you have it. So it was one of those places on a Sunday market in Galif Street. I had been there, and suddenly I find. I mean, this was basically a goldfish, probably packed for somebody, and it was kept. And probably the angle of that particular photograph makes it a little funny.
Yes, that's true. uh
Yeah.
Yeah, you place the fish on the head of that person sitting there. His head is covered, and there's this
Yes.
bag, the goldfish in it. Very funny.
Yeah.
uh Yes, and then maybe the last picture we can talk about as an example is I like that very much. It's a scene from a movie, I think, or it's a advertisement. On the street, there's a group of 5 men dressed in traditional clothes. They're all laughing and standing together,
Yeah.
and this is and then there's the silhouette of a couple,
Yeah.
so two lovers,
Yeah.
and the man leaning towards his girlfriend, and yeah, it's also this juxtaposition, like, even though that in the background the people, they are laughing, the man, and they're all in a happy mood, and it seems like they are observing this couple sharing a very intimate moment.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there is something very interesting going on. Of course, you are very right. On the back of the photograph, the people who are standing, they're basically in a wedding costume. That is basically for that is an advertisement for a particular clothing brand. And what we see, actually, a couple kissing, it is probably an optical illusion. Of course, from the photograph you cannot make it out, but they're not actually couples. These are actually two people who are actually crossing.
Okay, yes.
and
Okay.
like again, it was a little bit of luck, and it was a little bit of course, timing. And I clicked at a very moment wherein it looks like probably the man is actually kissing it. Probably they're very intimate, but it is actually not. These are actually in three layers. The man was probably in front of me, the lady was a little behind, and at the back we could see this particular hoarding.
Mm.
In Calcutta, unlike the West, it is you will not generally find people kissing in public.
Ah, okay, yes.
So this was something very of course it was a coincidence that happened, but it took me quite a bit of time. I was there for I do not think anything less than an hour. Like was I shot many photographs from that particular place, but something interesting was not happening, so I stayed back. And it was around a little bit of winter, if I'm not very wrong. It was shot in the month of December. So I said, look, if I have to do something, let me take at least, I try to take one photograph back home. So that is how this image came up.
Wow, yeah, nice composition then, and it's well, the story behind the picture very very interesting.
Thank
And
you.
did you have this particular shot in mind when you were standing there in front of this advertisement? Did you want to take this particular shot with this message?
No, no, no. Not nothing. This sort was planned. What I had tried, I was definitely one of my objective was, since the background was lit very beautifully, I was planning to do some kind of a silhouette. That was my primary objective, to do it. But this particular boy coming from the left and the girl coming from the right, that particular moment was something like, I thought, why not try to mix this two, why not try to mix. I never knew that it could happen, but finally it did happen. No, I did not plan about this shot at all. It is only when I saw this boy and this girl crossing, or maybe they were about 10 seconds apart, like they were, then this particular composition came into mind. They would probably at one point of time cross each other. So maybe why don't I try and take a photo. So it was, of course it was luck, of course it was luck, and of course it was a little bit of timing maybe.
Yeah, a mixture of both. You need that in street photography, the element of luck, and then also the anticipation
Yes.
of a scene like that. I mean, you clicked at the right moment when the two people crossing hit this point where you may think that they stand there in a quiet moment and that they're lovers, which was what I thought in the first place, but they were actually just two people crossing.
Yeah.
uh yeah, very very funny.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, streets throws up so many interesting things. I mean, generally when you are out on your day's work, of course photographers will always try to look for moments, but in general when you are engrossed with your own work or you're traveling, you do not see this kind of things. But when you are out on a photography walk, maybe this kind of things comes up.
Yes, that's true. um Being on a photography walk is a good a way to transfer to the next topic. You also teach workshops, and on the streets of Kolkata, you show other people around and teach them street photography. What kind of what can people expect from your workshops? What do you focus on in them?
Well, I have been very lucky enough to have taught over 500 students till now. I mean, it has been a phenomenal thing. And teaching has always been my passion, and I try my best to share my experiences as well as my mistakes, which I have done in the past with
Hmm.
my students. The best part of teaching in a workshop is I get an opportunity to learn more about the craft myself. So I approach the photography workshop from a student's point of view. Everything that I've developed till now, the course material or my slides, it has. It is something done as if I were the student, I would have expected my teacher to teach me. It is not, it is never from the teacher's point of view. It is always for the student's point of view. And before going out with any workshop, whenever I plan for any workshop, I always have an understanding who the students are and what are their exact requirements. So each and every workshop is customized as per their expectations. Say for example, if I am doing a workshop with school kids, the workshop will integrate a lot of photographs that they would relate to. Like something that would be maybe I would be doing a storytelling workshop, but I would include a lot of wildlife photographs, because that is how I could get their attention. Because if I start teaching them with some serious photographs, they would not even understand it. So that is why what I do is I always break my workshop into a 3-part series. What I generally do is the first part is the theoretical portion, wherein there is of course, if it is either for kids, even for adults, there is a lot of emphasis on photographs, which is of course followed by a practical session on a photo walk, and it does end with an constructive review of the work done during the practical session. So this is my approach towards workshops.
Mm-hmm. And it's mostly one-to-one workshops that you offer. Like people contact you and say, "I'm in Kolkata,
Yes.
and I'd love to explore the city with someone who knows the place."
Yeah, it does happen once in a while, especially with the foreigners who would be too keen into photography, but would like to explore the city with a local. It does happen, but primarily my workshops are for groups. Mostly I do this kind of teachings at various kind of colleges, universities, schools in Kolkata. Most of the schools have something called a hobby club, and one of the hobby clubs are photography clubs.
Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So even for like engineering colleges, medical colleges, all this kind of colleges, they have I'm not telling each and every college has it, but most of them have a hobby club, a photography hobby club. So they are quite keen in getting to know something new, maybe about it. Could be either street photography, it could be basics of photography. So whenever somebody approaches me for any kind of workshop, I always try to have an understanding what they would actually learn from me. It is immaterial what I want to teach to them. It is much more of use to them what they would like to learn.
Yeah. Oh. So do you contact the schools, or how does it work? Do you say do you look for?
Mostly I'll tell you, like again, it's through Facebook. Like we are connected to a lot of people. In 99% or maybe 100% of the cases as of now, it has been like schools and colleges. They have approached us that we would like to do something new regarding photography. Why don't you come over and spend time with us on a certain day? And even these colleges, what they do, they have some annual competitions, exhibitions. So that is how they come to. And since we visit a lot of the schools and all, people know that these are the people who visit and teach. And what I generally try to do is at places, I'll tell you, like I'll never call it this thing to be a social work, but if I find that there are a group of students who are really keen to know something about photography, but probably they do not have that resource of getting a workshop done by me, I do not charge a single paisa. Paisa is basically a unit of Indian currency. That is, I would say I would not charge even a single penny. I try
That's
to
very
do it.
generous.
No,
Yes.
it's. I'll tell you, Kai, it's not generous. I think I am not doing any kind of favor to them. The only thing is probably I am probably being selfish, because if I am giving something to them, at least something stays with them even after I am gone. So probably I want to stay within them. So that is the reason why I try to do workshops.
Yes. Yeah. Just to pass something on, and yeah, to pass on your knowledge of photography, and
Yes, because I won't be there for time immemorial. I'll have to die. So if something stays with them, and if something from them passes on to the next generation, so at least I live through that.
yeah, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, Shumo, for someone wanting to start out in street photography, what would be your advice for a person like that? Like, let's say your top three pieces of advice for someone getting started in street photography.
Right. I'll try to frame. Number one, the biggest problem when people start out with street photography is they worry about the success of a photograph. They are absolutely afraid of failure. Right. So my thing is, like, you have to try and try and try again. For example, let me again take an example of a gentleman called Steve McCurry, or anybody. It could be Henry Cartier-Bresson, it could be anyone. The biggest photographers who have kept a mark on us, maybe we know only about maximum of 20, 30, 40, 50 photographs. For example, I love Steve McCurry's work. If you show me top 50 photographs, I might be able to tell you, okay, this is a Steve McCurry photograph. But if you start me showing me the 80th photograph, I'll start telling you this might be a Steve McCurry photograph. If you show me the 120th photograph, I may not be able to recognize his photograph at all. But a person who has an experience and a career of 40 years, I know only 50 or 40 of his photographs. So technically it becomes probably one photograph in a year. I cannot sum it up in that way, but see, at the end of the day, you can take anyone. Ansel Adams, how many Ansel Adams photographs do we know? Maybe only a handful. So if a photographer like them can be known only for 40, 50, 60 photographs throughout their lifetime, when we start, why should we be frustrated? If I'm not getting a photograph, it is all fine. It is like I'll have to try for one more day. But probably the number one thing for me would be patience. If somebody lose patience, they cannot move on. The second thing probably I'll try to say is, for me, this could be a little philosophical one, but I'll tell you, with my experience in photography, I have found, like, if you have a factory, you get three things. One, you get a product if you are trying to make something. One, you get a byproduct, and the last thing would be a waste product. So even in terms of photography, what I feel is, you take a photograph for yourself. You do not take a photograph for somebody else. It is for your joy, your entertainment, your self satisfaction. You take that photograph for only yourself. So number one, practice it only for yourself, not for any kind of appreciation. The number two thing that probably comes in is, if somebody appreciates your photograph, so I'll definitely call it, I should not say, but technically it is probably a byproduct. It is not the reason why you are pursuing your photography for. You are pursuing your photography for yourself. But if somebody appreciates a photograph, it is always a wow factor. It is always a plus one. But it is not the motivating factor of doing photography. And number three, that what generally happens, it probably has happened with all photographers. It has definitely happened with me, and of course, I've come out of it. It is the third part of it is ego. When you get a lot of success, it is something that sets in, that I have been successful in so and so things. So when you go out on a street, if that thing stays back on your mind, that my photograph have been published over there, my photograph has been used in a certain magazine, I will be nowhere to go any more ahead. You have to, whenever you're on a street, however successful photographer you are, you have to think that I do not have a single good photograph on my hard drive. The photograph that I shoot today will be one of the things that I have to take it back home. This should be my best effort. What if I die tomorrow morning? So technically today becomes my last photography day, so I'll have to give in my best. This would be the second one. And third one, let me try to figure out. Yes, of course. Yeah, the third one would be to see a lot of work of others, not only the famous photographers, but even your contemporary photographers. Because, see, as a person, I'm very much limited with my own imagination. But if I try to see a lot of photographs that is being shot, maybe that will give me a lot more idea about how I can improve upon my work. And of course, may I add the fourth one?
Yeah, sure, of course.
The fourth one. The fourth one is probably the most vital. It is something like you have to be an heartless. You have to be an absolute heartless self critique. Never ever appreciate your own photograph. Always see your photograph from a critic's point of view. Always try to find a flaw in your photograph. Never console yourself and say, yeah, my photograph is so nice. You always have to say the photograph is okay, no problem, but these are the flaws. So the next time when you go out on the street or wherever it is, you have to take care of all these flaws. And since I cannot control the external environment, I cannot control the capability of a better photographer, I have the capability of controlling myself and probably improving myself. That would be probably the four, I won't say advices, but probably the four things probably that I have gone through.
Yes, that's great advice. Thank you very much for sharing. It's you're so right with that what you said, and so the last point, just be your your strongest critic, and never settle for something, and don't fall in love with your images to an extent that you don't see the flaws in them, and
Yes.
which propels you in the end to become an even better photographer. You always strive to take it to the next level and to make an even better image next time.
And what I generally do, I do it still today. Like I come after a photo shoot or maybe with an old image. I generally do not do this self criticism during the day. What I generally do is at night when everything is absolutely almost like pin drop silence. Uh, I open up my desktop. I open that photograph. I turn off all the room lights and I sit maybe about 5 or 10 feet away from that photograph and I start to judge. I start judging my own photograph and I'll try try the best to destroy any kind of ego that was actually associated with that photograph while clicking.
Yeah, that's a great way of dealing with your own images.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your thoughts and about photography. It's been a pleasure talking to you about street photography, Shomo. And to end this interview, where can listeners find out more about you?
I have a website. It is ssghosal.com. This is the website where I don't update it very often because I do not get good pictures very often. That is the biggest problem. So yeah, it's very difficult to get good pictures because for me, if I can have probably one good picture in a year, I think it is probably that year is settled. Of course, the whole of the year you have to try to get one single photograph. So that is one place you can see my work. And one place that I often put my work is Instagram. The Instagram handle is again the same. It is ssghosal. All my handles, everything like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, everything is ssghosal.
Great. Yeah, now I'll put the links to your website and social media profiles in the show notes to this episode as well. So
thanks, Kai.
it'll be all there.
It was absolutely brilliant to talk to you. We have probably known each other for almost, I'll tell, 3.5 years because the first interview took me was in probably 2014. I was just checking the dates today.
Yes, that's
It was
true.
December, if I'm not very wrong, it was December 2014. So technically, it is about 3.5 years. So Thank you so much for remembering me and coming back.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to follow up this way on a more personal level.
Thank you so much. And I have been very recently going through the podcast, and probably this is a very, very interesting way of sharing people's experiences with others so we can get inspired.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. And I hope, this podcast will develop into something that, many other photographers find value in.
I hope so. I hope people were not thoroughly bored regarding this discussion. I hope not.
I'm sure they won't. Thank you very much, Soumya, again, and all the best for you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Well, this was my interview with Indian street photographer Soumya Shankar Ghosal. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you want to listen to more podcast episodes in English on the Gate 7 podcast, please check out the show notes. There are links to the previous episodes in English, and I'll soon launch another podcast on my site, The Art of Creative Photography. So if you want to know when this goes live, please sign up for the newsletter and I'll let you know. Thank you very much for listening, and until next time. Bye-bye.